Welcome to this video series about improvising by Sietze de Vries. You can support this video series by donating the amount of your choice to Sietze de Vries' Patreon account, which can be found by searching Sietze de Vries Patreon or by finding the link in the description below the video. Enjoy the video.
The last two videos were about having a melody in the pedal and then doing some pretty complex things with the hands, with counterpoint and good voicing, which is actually not that easy to make. But now we arrive at Partita 6 and 7 of the Pachelbel Partita Christus der ist mein Leben, and those two are actually quite easy to make. So let me play Partita 6 for you. It's only two voices, and I will use this wonderful Schnitger organ in Uithuizen. And the sound you hear are the flutes 8 and 4 and 1.5 in the Hauptwerk, which gives this nice spiky sound that is also very typical for the North German Baroque organ. So the basic idea of these two voices, and we've seen that before when you have this coloratura, all the motives in the right hand, is that you have on the beat very often the melody note, and it's of course supported by the right bass note in the left hand. So if I only play the notes on the beat, you end up with something like this. And so on. So that's the basic idea. So when you try to compose this, and like I've said before, that's a good idea actually to write things down in the beginning so that you see the exact pattern and that you can use the examples like Pachelbel or Boehm, and that you get more and more the hang of it, how to improvise it. So this idea is actually very simple. You just play around those notes. Of course, in the back of your mind is still the harmony that goes along with it. So for example, if I play the first notes like this, of course that's both a triad of G, what you hear, first with an inversion, so with the B in the bass, and the second time in root position, and then the B is in the melody and the G is in the bass. So all that harmonic knowledge is still very much present in the back of your head, but in the meantime you only hear two voices and you make them as interesting as possible. And of course, if you can move away from the melody more and more without losing it, that's actually good, because otherwise it gets quite boring if you use the same motives all the time. So let's see how we can use this type of variation in our old 100th psalm. So same idea, left hand is playing bass notes and some inversions, sometimes kind of in-between note, a passing note, and the right hand is doing the nice coloratura with the fast notes all the time around the melody. And let's have a look at Partita 7 as well, because here Pachelbel uses three voices again. It's basically a harmonization. But in the harmonization some interesting motifs appear, so a rhythmical motive, but especially the chromatic motive is interesting. So he just changes some notes actually in the, you could say, the wrong way. So he uses a note that doesn't fit in the key you're in, but then chromatically it goes to the right note. So let me demonstrate what Pachelbel does here in Partita 7. I will use the beautiful principal 8 and then combined with a flute 4 in the Hauptwerk. And remember, I've said it before, on a good organ you can combine a lot of stops. So the combination of principal 8 and this Spitzflute 4 is really beautiful on an old organ like this. And I will add the tremulant as well. Of course, you notice that it gets kind of a sad character this way, and that makes sense because that's typically what chromaticism will do, especially when it goes down. So it could be used for lyrics of a hymn that are really sad about death or suffering. But of course you have to keep in mind it's also just a normal way of making variations. So with Pachelbel he does it all the time as one of the choices. And the same goes for having a hymn in a major key that you put in a minor key as a kind of variation. It sounds more sad, but it not always has a direct link to the lyrics of that particular song. So let's see if we can apply the same idea to our Old 100th Psalm. Of course, the main thing to do is to see where you can fit in these chromatic lines. So to see first what Pachelbel does here, he starts with only one voice, and then when the second voice comes in, he has the F natural first, which doesn't really make sense because you want to hear the F sharp. So he turns it into a F sharp. And the same in the left hand, just a second later. First he has the right note, but then he has a note in between two notes. That's actually the wrong one. So you have E and then E flat, which goes to D, and then you end up with these beautiful chromatic lines. And of course, basically it's trial and error to see where you can fit in these chromatic lines. So let's see what we can do with our tune. And keep in mind, we've seen it before when we did the chaconne. Very often you can also not only try it as a chromatic line, but you can also think of it as chords that you change. So what we did in the chaconne was, for example, that you change going from 1 to 5 in a major key, then you make it minor, and then the same with 4, you start it in major and then you make it minor, so that you end up with these type of sounds. And that idea of making minor, major and vice versa, you can use a lot. So, for example, in the melody it could be like this. So just give it a try and see what happens if you can make a real sad variation with chromatism. Good luck with it.